So we will start. This is the last session, and we would like to draw your attention. So this session will be dedicated to the net zero recovery, and we will have three lectures, 25 minutes each, and I would like to ask lecturers to stick to the timing. So 25 minutes and 25 minutes for the panel discussion. And so our topic is the reconstruction adaptive use. We touched this topic quite often because we are talking about the recovery and its different aspects. So we are very lucky because we have a framework formed by the previous lectures. So we understand the context as we have been discussing the issues and problems. When we talk about the recovery, we understand that there are a lot of problems with understanding of it and understanding of population, notion, values. So in any project of reconstruction, we need to fix the cost, first of all. So we will talk about challenges, about real projects, and we will discuss how these projects influence on the whole framework of recovery and how we implement some things. Our first speaker, Anastasiia Ponomaryova. So we are very glad to have Anastasiia here. She's a researcher, architect. She's for Kohati Foundation. She's co-foundation, and he's working a lot with the issues of social housing, resilience of new materials. So we are glad to hear about it from you. So good afternoon. I would like to start with the following. If any issues arise during the session, so please, you're very welcome to ask any questions. I'm ready to answer. If any questions, please raise your hands, and when it is comfortable for Anastasia, we will ask you, or maybe after a lecture. So I will try to speak about Kohati. I'm a co-founder of this Kohati. A part of a charitable foundation. So this project takes a lot of time from a big team, and this is my story. It's my love to the reuse and my story as a project manager. So today we have been talking a lot with friends, colleagues about our time. So these stories are inevitable because we live during the wartime, and there are so many challenges that it is impossible to avoid talking about them. And I think that one of these feelings I have always had since 2022. So this is a feeling of paradox. That's one of the dreaded moments, but also it is time when you see some light, some hope, something beautiful in human actions, how a person expresses herself. So for me, it's a paradox. So we have so wonderful projects. We are we here today. So based on the idea of paradox, I will present the idea of Kohati. So Kohati is has good vision, and but I would like to focus on the vision. We're So I think that's one of the most important motto of our foundation, to bring back resources and knowledge to those who lost everything. So this is in the center of our vision, and we follow this. We have been following this vision as we can. So my personal paradox in this vision, that I have a lot of things to the lot of things that I present, I don't have myself. I'm seeking stability, and at the same time, I'm building it for other people. So this is the paradox. So how can I help other people if I don't have my own feeling of stability? But I'm sticked to it. I find energy to implement such projects without personal stability. So from this sentimental feeling, I moved forward. So we are working in the western regions of the country, Vinnytska, Khmelnytska regions. So we have built 9 objects, and the 10th object is under construction. So we are in this eternal circle, seeking new objects and building new objects. So we working with the abandoned territories. All our objects are reconstructed objects, which have been abandoned for several years, 5 years, for example. So this aspect remains till the end of the project. So we like it so much, the transformation process, the reuse process. So in fact, we have confidence right now. So this is the good tool, but it doesn't resolve all housing problems, but it contributes to it. But we didn't have this confidence all the time. So first project was quite exciting for us. We didn't, when we started, we didn't believe that the transformation of the abandoned residential students' residence, we didn't believe that it will have success, would have success. So I didn't have enough resources to start, but this project was quite successful. So the transformation of abandoned locations is what we need. So right now we are stuck here. We stick to this idea. So according to the figures, it's lifestyle reuse, but in fact, I would like to mention some figures. So many people have already received their housing, 1,700 people. So we are creating new terminology: hotel, social hotel. So most residents for Kohate are residents of shelters. So we're working, as you mentioned, with the emergency shelter. So objects that were rebuilt by other organizations, but right now they are to be modernized, because people live there, have been living there for quite longer than than organizers believed. So our partners are German, American, Sweden organizations, and we are trying to diversify our findings, and we are trying to attract local business. So we asked producers of furniture, to be our partners. So they provide some materials or they gave discounts. So 20% of our cost and we are trying to have our financial independence because international organizations are not interested in helping Ukrainian foundations to rebuild objects for 100%. So this is a project of concrete specific housing. This is the project of reconstruction. So we need to settle there 150 people. And what is important that here we test two experimental models, management models. We want to start to charge a service fee. So inhabitants feel their responsibility for this space. And so they start to organize a renovation fund to show the capacity of NPO to become an organizer. So we're nervous, excited about it, how it will work, this hotel. But without testing, it is impossible to develop further strategy because we feel that we reached some limits and there is need in seeking stable economic models and to be independent on both state subsidies or international donors. So I would like to talk about the safety. I'm architect. I would like to work as a designer, but I understand that architecture can't give stability to people. It is background of this specific stability. Lease agreement, good management, maintenance of buildings bring this stability. And we understand it from communicating with our people that people they are not ready to become participants to be inhabitants of this residence without any guarantee. So architecture is an important space. People can't integrate without this space, but they need legal background, some lease agreement or any other legal act. So we got this idea and we were so courageous to set up a foundation to transform the abandoned objects. And this first object will be a testing object for us. I think we don't. It's not necessary to speak about figures that shows the necessity of building the tremendous figures. I would like to add one thing that behind these figures there are personal stories of people who leave Ukraine but want to stay. These personal stories are motivated better than these figures. One of these story, I think that one of the last story published in the Ukrainian Pravda about the army of the people without housing, about military servicemen who were forced to leave their house as they defended this land. And this story motivates all our team to continue without ignoring these figures, but all these personal stories encourage us. One of the interview that we had.
They mentioned that sometimes they have to return to the occupied territory because they didn't find support and opportunity to stay. It is shocking for us. And this paradox is that we are working at the edge of feeling urgently the urgence. We don't know how long it will last. We are not building shelters, but we keep being in the state that we will need to accommodate more people. About reuse, when we worked with neglected, abandoned houses, this approach has social component. Some people have good memories. For example, in Kalush, we used that for social cohesion between users and new IDPs. So it was a kind of the bridge between the host community and the new ones. Reuse is also energy, which gives more energy every day. You can play a little bit. One of good creative examples is this bench made from radiators. So what can be done with reusing old obsolete materials, something new and creative. Within Kohata, we are limited by construction standards, timeline, but in one of hostels in Kamenets, we used old door from Zurich hotel. We calculated CO2 emissions, also a new door frame costs. People were happy because the door was better quality and more soundproof. If we compare with the cheapest door, we would be able to purchase within our budget. We can't do it the best way. Sometimes we have a kind of rapid reuse when we just take a ready component and install it. For example, part of furniture, a mirror shelf with a lamp. Reuse for us is a story about preserving memories. Sometimes removing something. This is Russian Vasilisa from kindergarten. This photo is from our construction exhibition in Kalush when we demonstrated our new architectural solutions. We also shared stories from the kindergarten, and this city mayor went to this kindergarten. It was pretty interesting. And also there was a kindergarten teacher's assistant. She cited a poem, told us an interesting story. We understood that this integration really means something and can even happen via architecture. Sometimes I call it sometimes we have such an evident solution as common spaces after living in transit shelters. They don't want to share a lot, but we also create community centers. And now I will tell you about funding. This month we will start an open competition for Kalush residents. It will last 1 month and a half. This is the first open procedure of selection. We will announce our criteria. There will be 2 people in the commission from the charity, representatives of the council, and our partners. And there will be a service contribution below the market price by 20-30%. This is our first time. We are worried, but we understand that it is our path to sustainability. So we are constructing a future on the place where something was damaged. Our time is not stable, uncertain. It reflects the Ukrainian context, but there is so much hope. That's why we keep working. We have also social networks and the website. everything is open and transparent. Well, it was very interesting paradox in personal stories and in new form.
And now I want to introduce our next lecturer. It's Duncan Baker-Brown. He's UK-based architect, academic, environmental activist, founder of Baker-Brown Architectural Studio, which is a research practice which concentrates on topics of climate responsible architecture, and also he's teacher at University of Brighton. Also, he's an author of the Reuse Atlas and co-chair of the REBA Climate Action Expert Advisory Group. So, Duncan, we are really pleased to have you here. And for the next 25 minutes, the floor is yours. Welcome and thank you.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you well.
Well, while I set up my slides, I just want to say thank you so much for inviting me. It's a huge honor to take part in this conference and hugely inspirational themes, obviously in very testing times. So I will share my slides. Just want to see if you can see them. Let me see now, hang on. Can you see the slide deck?
Just a moment. Yes, we can see your screen, but not the presentation. Oh, yes, now it works.
Was that it?
Yes, yes, thank you.
You've got one slide, yeah?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Well, good afternoon, everybody. Yeah, please be patient with me. I'm obviously speaking from the United Kingdom, and I'm speaking from the point of view of an architect, academic, and climate activist based in the United Kingdom. And obviously, we are all preoccupied by this guy and what he gets up to on a day-to-day basis. It really is having a profound effect on everybody on planet Earth, to such an extent that lots of large multinational companies are deciding that perhaps they went too far, acknowledging that there was a climate crisis, and perhaps we need to back off a bit, which is, of course, just the time at the moment where we don't need to do that. We need to put more energy, excuse the pun, into combating the climate emergency. We appear to be here, and when I say we, I mean the global north, Europe, and the UK and the USA. 10 years ago, humans extracted between 45 and 60 billion tons of raw materials from planet Earth every year. Fast forward to last year, and it's got up to about 130 to 140 billion tons of materials that are mined or harvested from the planet. And that's expected to rise by another 60% by 2060. Well, it's doubled in 10 years, so I think rising by 60% in 35 years is probably quite conservative. So around the world, we know resource security is a thing of the past. But why us? And by us, I mean, why the construction industry? Well, it's because that construction industry consumes about half of all the world's mined and harvested raw materials every year. And it's the environmental destruction associated with this process that is one of the main factors in generating the current mass extinction of species. The United Kingdom alone consumes 600 million tons of products every year, and it generates 200 million tons of waste a year. And the construction sector is responsible for 2/3 or 63% of that, which equates to 120 million tons of material coming from the construction industry into landfill and incineration every year. Now, by comparison to the rest of the Europe, the construction industry across Europe will create between 35 and 45% of total waste flows, whereas in the UK it's more like 65. So I say to you, hold on to what you already have and reuse it. Avoid the tariffs. And by that, I mean the Trump tariffs. We never know what things are going to cost because we never know what the tariffs are going to be. I understand there's going to be further tariffs today on countries complying to the 1.5 degree temperature rise Paris Agreement. It's all about managing your existing resources and dramatically reducing the need to consume new raw materials. Reduce the previously manufactured. And a phrase I came up with in my book in 2017, mine the Anthropocene or the Anthroposphere. The Anthropocene is the current geological epoch that we're in, the human-made geological layer that wraps the planet, whether that's ocean, plastic in our oceans or landfill sites or our cities, whatever. But if we mine the Anthropocene, we can then nurture natural resources, give them a break from supplying us with raw materials. We've got to reuse the previously manufactured. Well, so the challenges in doing this, well, planet Earth exists as an ever accelerating linear economy where we take natural materials and we process them and make them into things, and moments later we throw them away. And no other natural system works like this. Some good news. We know what to do. If you design a 10 meter by 10 meter concrete slab and you make it 50 millimeters thinner than normal, you'll save as much carbon as avoiding meat for a year. We are in an impactful industry in the construction sector. The other good news is everybody's still asking, what is a circular economy? You know, we've got famous architects in the UK like David Chipperfield winning the biggest award in architecture, the Pritzker Prize, saying that retrofit, the reuse of existing buildings, is not only the right thing to do, it's the more interesting thing to do. The Royal Institute of British Architects, where I sit on the National Council, is asking its 48,000 members to brace themselves because they're going to have mandatory climate literacy tests. Our industry in the UK has also got a brand new UK net zero carbon building standard. We're going to benchmark, well, acknowledge and benchmark embodied carbon as well as operational carbon. DEFRA, which is the Department for the Environment, Farming and Rural Affairs, one of the biggest UK government departments, for the last year has had a circular economy task force looking into creating a circular economy plan for England and Wales. And this was an event I went to on Thursday night. We had 450 people on the London Eye, which is a great big Ferris wheel in the middle of London. Tier 1 companies there, some of the biggest construction companies in the UK were there, as well as other people, the whole construction sector. It's very exciting. This is just some of the people waiting to get onto the London Eye. And these are people who were all committing to circular economy practice. And it's great that we were in the city because I think it's cities that give us hope, actually, because at the moment, most stuff processed and manufactured and consumed arrives in cities, but it arrives in separate flows, in linear flows, and they don't communicate to each other. So stuff flows into the city and then out. And what we need is these flows to start talking to each other, to act like natural ecosystems, where waste from one system is food for another, and where there's no such thing as waste, there's just stuff in the wrong place. And that's where that can happen in cities, but we need the digital and physical infrastructure. The other good news is hundreds of cities now across Europe and beyond have circular economy plans. London has one, Brighton has one where I'm based. And more people are considering our cities as material stores for the future, for future cities, where we all become urban miners searching for new material sources to reduce the need for natural raw materials. And we don't just talk about it, we do it. And this is a project in Brighton called the Brighton Waste House. It's actually not a house, it's a 2-story teaching facility. But 90% of everything you see there is material other people threw away. There's actually 55 tons of rubbish created a building that performs to passive house standards. It actually creates 30% more energy than it consumes. Interestingly, it was built by students and apprentices, over 360 of them. So this is a shot of a typical day on the waste house construction site, with the carpentry tutor on the left there with the blue hat on, and everybody else there are students. And we got this thing built, made out of waste material. You can see waste ply there, waste timber used as the columns and the beams. Even the bolts were secondhand, collected off other building sites. And this is a shot of from a summer school we did, where we got the building almost complete over the summer in 3 months. On Wednesday mornings, we close the building site down every week to accommodate visits from school children and anyone that was interested. And we had over 750 school children arrive on site to look at the building site. Now, the reason we did it is because this is back in 2014, but in 2012, there was a statistic in the UK that for every 5 houses we built, 1 house worth of construction waste went to landfill or incineration. And a lot of that construction waste is literally surplus material that's brand new, never used, but just gets sent to incineration or landfill. So we were trying to prove that that stuff going to be thrown away was useful and it had a value above being just waste. However, about halfway through the design development process for this project, we also decided to raise awareness of the stuff we throw away on a day-to-day basis. And that's why these school children are holding DVDs, VHS videos, and other plastic stuff, which we thought we'd thrown away 20 years ago, 10 years ago. But as everybody knows, there is no away. So what we decided is that the waste house would be this sort of vessel containing construction waste, but also products without an end-of-life strategy. Because this building resides, it sits on campus at the University of Brighton, where we have people learning how to be fashion designers, product designers, architects, etc. So we want to point to this stuff, this dumb stuff that doesn't have an end-of-life strategy, and say, don't design like that. Whatever you design, whether you're designing a toothbrush, a car, or a house, or a city, think of how the product can be a resource at the end of its first life. And the waste house has attracted numerous other research projects. This was about 5 years ago. This was an Interreg EU project where we were asked to find 2 waste flows near the waste house in Brighton and turn these waste flows into construction products. And so this is normal stuff. This is rubble from a demolition site. But then we got unusual stuff. This is a restaurant near the waste house that throws away about 55,000 oyster shells a year, because it's a seashell restaurant. And so we looked at that, and those 2 waste flows and others, and we started playing around with this material. We also, I'll go forward for a slide, we were also asked to look at textile waste. And with Veolia, who are the international company that deal with waste procurement in the UK, across Europe and the rest of the world, we asked them, what's your biggest waste problem as far as textiles is concerned? And they said immediately, duvets, bedding. Bedding is bulky and there's lots of it thrown away all the time. In Brighton, where I'm based on the south coast of England, it's cheaper to throw away a duvet and buy a new one than it is to get one cleaned. I mean, these are ridiculous things to say. But the great thing about duvets is that they are insulation. So we thought we were going to get some insulation, we thought we were going to get some textile waste and recycle it into an insulation product. But what we did is just find insulation. So it became a reuse project, which is a lot more interesting than a recycling project. We simply washed the duvet, and there you can see we opened up the waste house there on the right, and we installed the duvets. And of course, they've got great insulation value. We also, going back to this slide, this is us experimenting with the different waste flows to create, for example, clay tiles reinforced with chicken feathers from some of the duvets. All sorts of things we could do with these waste flows. And this is interesting, sort of fast forward to 2 years ago, and now there's a company in the UK that is making insulation for buildings made out of waste duvets. And this is what we did with the oyster shells. Oyster shells are calcium carbonate, which is the same material as limestone. So we were able to fire the oyster shells at 900 degrees and create what we call quicklime. And we mixed a bit of ash with the quicklime, and then the aggregates were broken up oyster shells. So the white tiles, you can probably only see one in this slide, one at the top left. They're actually 100% oyster shells, some of them fired into quicklime and some of them broken up to be the aggregates. But it's actually what we call Roman cement or Roman concrete. And they're beautiful tiles. As they cure over the next decades, they actually absorb carbon. The downside is obviously there was what we call a carbon burp. We created a carbon footprint because we fired the shells. But what we have done is divert a waste flow into a useful product. And now this is a project for an extension to the Design Museum in Ghent, in Belgium. And the people who did these tiles for us are doing these bricks for this building. And these bricks are made out of waste from the site. So they're hydraulically pressed, so they're not fired. They've got about 1/5 of the carbon footprint of a normal brick, which is fired, but these are just hydraulically pressed bricks, and they're made out of the waste from the site. And at the moment, there's a company called BC Materials in Belgium that's making 100,000 of these bricks, in effect made out of compacted earth and whatever else they're digging out of sight. The waste house attracted, as I said, other research projects, and this was a more recent one where we were working with Rota, who are based in Brussels and one of the leading exponents of deconstruction and reuse, as far as I'm concerned. And they asked us, among other things, us being the University of Brighton, if we could host a summer school. And we called the school, we called it the School of Reconstruction. And it was meant to be in 2020 initially. And it was going to be on site in Brighton. And we were going to have students from across Europe. And we did. We had 80 students sign up for this 3-week summer school. And what was incredible is that the city of Brighton were prepared to give us a school that was it was an empty school in Brighton. We had that as our site. But also they were prepared to deconstruct a building instead of demolishing it and put the deconstructed elements of the building in the school, stack them up in the playground for our students. And these are our team leaders, you can see here, to reappraise that material. Now, the last thing that they were going to do, which would have been amazing, is they were going to put that material out into their supply chain and to see if any construction contractors would actually go anywhere near this secondhand material. And that would have been amazing, but we had COVID. So we did it in 2021 instead, and it was a digital summer school. So we didn't do any of the physical things, we just speculated. But the great thing was that we weren't restricted by the boundaries of the 6 partner European companies. So the European partners who are part of this Interreg project. So we were able to cast our net around the whole world. So we had students taking part in this that came from South America, North America, Europe, across to China. So it was really exciting to work with people from all over the world. And we brought a book out last year that is open source. You can download it for nothing. And the book's got about 25 chapters in it. And they're essays produced by all the team leaders, informed by the work we did with that International School of Reconstruction. So that might be quite interesting for any of you to download. Now, that book was out now, and we've got the book that I've worked most on, though, is this one, which we published last year with the Royal Institute of British Architects. And before it was published last year, for about 3 years, I've been putting together this, what I call a reuse atlas. And it's got 40 case studies of architectural projects, made of 39 architectural projects and one from product design, where people have employed circular practices. And it's broken down into 4 main chapters, and those chapters take you on steps towards an actual closed loop systems and the circular economy. So the first step is the most basic one, and that's recycling. Now, recycling's okay, it's good. It can do what we did with the oyster shells, which is to divert a waste stream. But the problem with it is it consumes energy and creates a carbon footprint and creates waste. But sometimes you can be dealing with a really nasty product that you're going to recycle, and that can be doing the environment some good. You can be cleaning up the oceans, I say, by getting plastic out of our oceans. But step 2 is, in the book, is even better. It's got case studies focused on reuse. Then step 3 is where you reduce. So you do what you normally do, but you hardly use any material at all. And the 4th chapter is dedicated to proper circular economy closed loop systems. Now, what I'm going to do for the next 5 or 10 minutes is just talk about some of the case studies in this book, which I think you might find interesting. So the first one is a company called GumTech. And this is actually a graduate from the University of Brighton, who was a product designer and started looking at bubble gum, because chewing gum is the sort of most common habit that human beings have got, that's sort of human made, which is around the world. In every continent, in most countries of the world, humans chew gum. So it's a huge waste stream, and it's a big problem in the UK and other places where you've got lots of people in cities dropping chewing gum on the ground. So this student here thought, well, let's have a look at it. And she pretty quickly realized that it was plastic. So she set up a company when she left university called Gumdrop or GumTech. And her first product was this Gumdrop bin. So this is a chewing gum bin. So this is a bin you'd put on lampposts in the street, and you put your chewing gum in it instead of putting it on the pavement. And the interesting thing is that when it's filled up, the bin and the gum get taken to her factory, because the bin is made of old chewing gum. So the whole thing gets taken to a factory and recycled into more Gumdrop bins. So that's turning a nasty linear problem into a circular success. And she has other products as well, like the soles of these Stan Smith shoes are made out of old chewing gum. Now, step 2 is the one the step that I'm more interested in, because it doesn't include or doesn't require so much embodied energy. You're not shredding or melting or crushing something. You're carefully deconstructing stuff for reuse. And this is Rota Deconstruction, who are based in Brussels. And these slides should be, or these images should be read from top left to bottom right. So Rota take on buildings that are normally demolished, and they carefully unpack them. And they redistribute the material in their own yard and on the digital platform they've got. But this is a collection of buildings in Brussels that they're working on at the moment, and it's part of the World Trade Center in Brussels. And this is only one little bit of it. It's a big development from the late 60s, early 70s. And the buildings are not performing very well by current standards. They're overheating or they're cold, etc. Big energy guzzlers. So this is a story of how these buildings are being adapted, where they're being taken down, they're being deconstructed, not demolished. And the deconstructed material is being cleaned up and redistributed and sent out into the supply chain. And this is 2 images I took when I went to visit Rota's facilities in Brussels. And as I said, they also have this digital facility as well. Here's a company from Rotterdam called Superuse. I like these sketches because they're simple sketches, but they show the story of how a derelict school became a new school. And here you go. Here's the derelict building. Superuse did a 3D printed model of the building, but they broke it down into its components. They worked with school children to reassemble those components like a game. And then the old building material was used to make the new school. Whoops. And there it is. So this is the material of the old school becoming the new school, but it's totally different. This is a bit more ordinary in a way. This is a steel frame of a building that was in Dublin in Ireland, and a company called Cleveland Steel, who needed a new big warehouse for their company in Yorkshire in Northern England. And instead of getting a new one, they found an old one in Dublin. They deconstructed it, reassembled it, and there it is. It's not a pretty building, but they saved £1 million on a £5 million project by finding a second-hand building and going to the bother of deconstructing it, taking it across the Irish Sea to Yorkshire and rebuilding it. And here's their facilities. And this is what they normally deal with. They deal with surplus oil, this oil pipeline. And this material is normally used to create new football stadiums or sports stadiums. But what's really interesting is they've got a new market now, which is one of the big successes in the UK at the moment, is people deconstructing steel frame buildings. And here they are, the I-beams of steel frame buildings here on the right-hand side for new buildings. So this is a new market in the UK where people are using second-hand steel, not recycled steel, second-hand steel. And this is the last project I'll show for this talk. This is the Lidia group in Denmark, creating a new school out of a derelict old school. So this drawing is trying to explain the old school there on the left, creating the new school. And here it is being deconstructed. And as with a lot of school buildings, a lot of on campuses, the buildings are from lots of different eras. So the main image here shows the 19th century building, but then there on the right, you've got the 1980s and 1990s bits. And of course, the palette of materials is quite interesting and varied. So these are the materials coming off the building. And then these are drawings that they made of the new classrooms using the old materials. Here's a structural engineer's drawing showing the original timber trusses that aren't quite up to the job of the new trusses, but they get reinforced with a bit of steel. And here's the new school made out of the old school. And that's my last slide. I'm not commenting on the aesthetics of it or the architectural form of it, but that is a new school made out of the old derelict school. And I'll leave you with that one. Thank you very much.
Duncan, thank you very much for such inspiring and amazing lecture. For me, it's really, really interesting to talk about all these different possible options to use, like to work with the topics you tell with different typologies, different types of projects. And let's continue it after our next lecture on our panel discussion. So please stay with us. And I'm really happy to introduce our next lecturers, who are Lidia, Shimon, and Bart Gruyaert from Eco. And Eco is like great case to discuss. And I'm actually really excited to have you here because Eco has an impressive scope of projects and amazing experience in low carbon projects and working with circular infrastructure, and also including their pioneer in low carbon cement production in Ukraine. Also, I'm amazed with your projects where you work with eco materials and deconstruction technologies. So we are really, really happy to have you here. Bart, welcome. I hope it's comfortable for you, and I hope you're not behind the wheel right now.
I'm still behind the wheel, but I will take the first parking lot to park, so no worries.
Okay, so we'll try to extend it till you park.
No, but it's okay to start. It's okay to start.
Okay, thank you. So let's start. The floor is yours.
So probably somebody could share our presentation, and Bart will have a short introduction about Neo-Eco Friends, what actually their experience abroad, about short presentation about Neo-Eco Ukraine, and I will do the rest. So Bart, floor is yours.
I'm waiting till I see the...
You don't see it? You already start sharing, no? We can hear you.
Sorry, you're on mute.
I cannot see the presentation.
So like maybe you will just give a like few comments. Do you see? No? No. And microphone is cut again. You are muted. Bart, you are muted.
Sorry. So basically, Eco is a French company created in the meantime 17, 18 years ago. What we try to do is to look to waste from a different perspective. For us, waste is a product that has certain characteristics that is waiting to be reused or repurposed. So we typically consider ourselves primarily as material engineers. So we are not architects. There are enough people in the room, I believe, architects and great architects. But we are primarily material engineers, and we dream of a world without waste. Ready for it? And yeah, now I see. Perfect. And we gradually tried out a lot of things. So what is very particular in Eco France, but also Eco Ukraine, is that we advance by doing, by experimenting, by learning. So often legislation in France, when we were doing things at the beginning, legislation was not adopted to circularity or the idea of circularity. So we took the inspiration primarily from how can we recreate a material that has the same functionalities as linear economical material. And the second thing, which is often more complex, is can we do it also economically? Means can we produce a material that is technically equivalent and price-wise competitive to linear economy? And I must say that over the time, the scenarios are becoming more and more favorable for us because of taxation systems. So when we started 17, 18 years ago in France, that was very difficult. Nowadays, on annual basis, we can do around 20, 25 million tons of waste that we repurpose or reuse in the French context. And one example that I want to give to people, of course, we are focusing a lot on construction materials and construction waste. Like Duncan said, that is the primary source of CO2 emission and the primary source of waste. So when we are talking about waste, generally in Eco, we are talking about not organic waste, but we are talking about inert material such as concrete waste and others. The biggest project that we did so far, and of which, of course, we are extremely proud, is, and I see I have a parking in 2,400 meters, which is great, is the extension of the metro of Paris. So those who are visiting recently Paris, they've seen a little bit all over the works of the extension of the metro of Paris. And in their additional planning, they were having the idea to excavate the material, bring it to a landfill about 200 kilometers outside of Paris, and then bring in quite a lot of new material to build the metro. And in 2017, when we saw that, we said, hey, look, guys, you are a little bit stupid and crazy because, in fact, you are not a tunnel boring company, but you are a mining company. You will mine 42 million tons of material, and you can reuse, in our opinion, more than 90% of that material. When we said that in 2017, they declared us crazy. They said this is not possible. We are tunnel engineers. Our material is good material. We cannot use waste. The standard prejudgments. And then over time, 2019, 2020, they came back to us and said, well, in fact, your idea, can we try it out? So we tried on one metro line, the whole system. And it turned out with a lot of sweat, a lot of material they excavated could be reused, but inside Paris. And that some of the materials were even usable for the tunnel works, were usable for the Olympic Games. So in the 2024 Games, the majority of the material that was used was circular material out of this kind of projects and some others that we've done. And the cherry on the cake for them is that they discovered on the first line that we worked together with them, that it was not only good for environment and everything, but the fact that they didn't have to transport over long distances waste meant also, and bringing a lot of new products, meant in fact that they could save a lot of costs. And they extrapolated that on the whole project, if they would have done the whole project on a circular economical way, they could have saved around €500 million for this project. Of course, as I mentioned, we did one metro line. On that one metro line, they saved €80 million, which is still significant. And now they are still constructing some new metro line between the airport and Paris Center. This is done the same way. In the north of France, they are constructing a new river channel connection with the Belgian port of Antwerp. That is also done now in this way. So what became from 2017 a crazy story became a standard practice in public works, large infrastructure works, and there's also a new high-speed railway line constructed in the south. It has the same way of looking to it. So it's a great use case of how circularity has to fight against prejudgments also in France and still today in France, but how by large projects such as this, the Olympic Games, we gain track. Before I give the floor to Lidia, what I want to say is that when we started in Ukraine, we came, of course, with our experience of France, but in fact, we nearly had to start from scratch again because legislation is different, the prejudgment is different. It is not because it works in France that people believe it can work in Ukraine. So we started more or less in summer 22 with the project. So at the beginning, we were in an idea of, okay, we need to deliver expertise from France to Ukraine. 3 years later, the idea shifts a little bit in the way that often we also transfer knowledge of what we learned and what we are doing in Ukraine to the colleagues in France, or for example, colleagues who are working on projects in Turkey post-earthquake. So I think what is very important to understand for the people in the audience or people online, that for us, Ukraine is not so much as, okay, we as a French mother company, we will teach how we can do things in Ukraine, but it's above all a learning experience, how to adopt what we know from France into Ukrainian context, but above all also to learn a lot from Ukraine and to bring that back to France or to other international contexts. So for us, the image that we like to use is that Ukraine is not only fertile soil for agriculture crops, but it is above all extremely fertile for innovation. And later on, I think, Lidia, I have to explain clean cement, but I will do that when you come to those slides.
Yeah, great. So as I told you before, my colleagues, that Bart is multitask person, so now you see it by own. Yeah, thanks a lot, Bart, for this introduction. I will switch for Ukrainian language just to be very clear and trying to be short and sweet, because I think in the end of the day, everybody is a bit tired and thinking about dinner. So yeah.
Our company started working in 2022, and our main task was not just to create a company working in circular economy. Our idea was to show that a full cycle is possible in Ukraine, to show at pilot projects to reuse construction waste and show people that it is real and possible and not so hard. Our main purpose is combination of our projects in Ukraine for people who know us well, that we have a very good practice in macroeconomic research, AI, working in social projects, refurbishment of schools. We don't have just expertise from France, but a lot of case studies in Ukraine, and we can understand the essence of context. If we create pilot projects, we can demonstrate. Pilots are an amazing opportunity to test on a small scale in order to scale up in future. Pilot projects show problems with legislation and technical ones. We have enough. I will ask Bart to talk about clean cement project in Mykolaivska, which was supported by the government of Denmark. It is a continuation of the veteran project created by with the support of Mission East. Veterans took part in this project, and clean cement is the next step to creating new eco products. Is Bart here?
If I understood you well, it's my time again.
Yeah.
Because my Ukrainian is not good enough. So on clean cement, the basic idea, and Duncan touched the word on it, is that in construction industry, the primary source of CO2 emission is cement, the binder. And in Mykolaiv, we have a pilot plant under construction by which we want to demonstrate that waste from steel making could be used for the reconstruction of Ukraine. It's a project, a multi-stage project, first to do the standard receipt and over time to inject CO2 as an additional binder. So we are convinced that in Mykolaiv, over a time frame of 2 years, we will be able to make a binder that is close to zero CO2 emission. And of course, that would have a huge impact on the climate impact of the reconstruction efforts that unfortunately needs to happen in Ukraine now and during the war and after the war. It's a very challenging project for the simple reason that we are not so far away from the front line. We are in a small community, so the small community is not used to have an industrial project in their community. We have energy problems like anywhere in Ukraine. So it's quite challenging, but we don't give up. We hope to be operational by the end of this year, but let's see what is the reality depending on a lot of different topics. So we will be able in this demonstration project to produce more or less 20 to 40,000 tons, which is quite still a lot of volume of low carbon cement. So it means that people in the audience or online who are doing projects in Mykolaiv, South Mykolaiv, South-West Dnipropetrovsk region, and in Kherson right bank part, they are more than welcome to reach out to us and to see how we can supply you with this product, which comes at the same cost as regular cement. So it's not priced above it, it's at the same price range as regular cement, but it has, of course, the benefit of using existing industrial waste, and it has the advantage of not emitting high volumes and over time, hopefully, zero volumes of CO2. So that is about clean cement. Back to you, Lidia.
We plan to use also iron ore waste from Kryvyi and we will be able to create absolutely new product, and we will be able to reconstruct much more efficiently. We will be able to supply it to the end consumer. It is very important to demonstrate this full cycle because there are just few options: dismantling or renovation or partial renovation. If we are dismantling, we have to separate all these materials, asbestos separately, wood separately, and up to 94% we have on the site can be reused. It is crucial. In Gostomel, we achieved 95% of recycling. In Mykolaiv, 90% recycling of the debris of the damaged houses. Clean cement is a project demonstrating transformation of construction waste into a new material. Not just creating new materials, but also implementing European experience in Ukraine. Renovation plays a very important role. If a building needs renovation, we think we should have common sense here. What do I mean? 50% of housing stock in Ukraine are cold and old houses. Together with our partners Resin, Roskvit, Metec in Chernigiv, we implement a new approach to renovation. Usually, how do we make houses warm? We don't use eco materials. We want to change the vision. 100% you said these terrible images in Ukraine when several flats are, others are not. I think it is not beautiful, and we would be happy if we did it other way. Tech company has experience of renovation in Estonia. They are creating prefabricated panels. You can change post-Soviet houses and create a new design, cover with wood, reused brick. We will share we decided that we would use wood because it is light and has a long life cycle, water resistance, energy efficient, absorbing air, one of the best. before I
very little about eco materials. Everyone says eco, but nobody says that eco is circular. Is different thing. There are a lot of standards regulating safety or eco-friendly, but it doesn't show that these materials will be reused. But in the circular economy, it means that the product is used, and after its usage, it will be recycled and reused. And for us and for eco companies, it's very important to return back to this circled used materials. So when we started to work in Ukraine, we encountered with the following problem. There are contaminated materials on the building sites, but the buildings hit by a missile is completely different from the infrastructure damaged by the earthquake. So the experience of Ukraine is unique, and that's why an idea arose to create an asbestos testing laboratory, and we have already opened it, and we work in Kryvyi Rih. This testing lab will operate in Kryvyi Rih, and thanks to this development, and our main idea is to examine asbestos in the ruins. First of all, to preserve the health of the nation, and second, to create the possibility to reuse the building materials. And before that time, we needed to send samples abroad, wait, and pay a huge amount of money, and Ukraine didn't have such possibilities. We have already ordered some equipment, and we are focusing on employing people and training them abroad. And our main stake is to accredit laboratory and to train our employees. So for us, it's very important, the whole cycle. And you can see how they are connected. Concrete producing plant is connected with everything we are doing. I hope I do not take too much time.
Thank you very much for all our presenters. And without further ado, I propose to shift to our discussion part. Yeah, if you have some questions, think about it. My first question would be for all of our presenters, and this one will be about the experimentation in your project, because we heard a lot about it in every presentation, like experiments with unconventional materials, experiments with like, let's say, typologies or even types of maintenance. So my question is if the experiments are the like really driving force behind the change, if we should consider them as a main part of it, or it's just like small part, but just most I don't know, most interesting for people, and most like interesting to present, but not the whole process behind it. We can switch from Ukrainian English. So.
Our moderator is just repeating his own question in English. Now it's repeating it in Ukrainian.
Maybe I will answer from an international perspective, if that is okay. My opinion is that when you're talking about circular economy, you have to fight above all against prejudgments in existing legislation. And that means that you have to start, in our opinion, always with experimental level of projects to show that it is possible, that the results are economical feasible. And it's only then that you start to get a larger movement of early adopters in any country that embraces the movement of this kind of circular economy. And only then it can become policy, but you can never, I see very few European Union countries that started immediately with legislation and then suddenly circular economy come. It was often very small scale experiments over decades. And then suddenly, because of taxation that I gave already, it became a mass movement in which major players also then shifted. And I think Ukrainian market will have the same, where now the big construction material players are often lobbying against circular economy. And then you will see, once the taxation system in Ukraine over time will shift, then those companies will also embrace, and it will become part of a standard practice. That's a little bit my opinion from an international perspective.
Yeah, from Ukrainian retrospective, we should mention that there is quite strict norms in Ukrainian and Libyan that oblige builders to and architectural companies and other engineers to be very strict in everything that they actually doing. But from other side, we would like to implement circular economy in all our work. So for us, it's super important to have something like a middle, and before we become too straight, because government should taking care about safety of the people, and from other side we would like to achieve more greener solution for Ukraine. We should this experimental process could give us a cool possibility to find some solution to test some in the projects to thinking about both about safety and about ecological solution. So experimental gives us quite unique possibility to understood which decision are the great one and which we should skip. So yeah.
Okay, Anastasiia.
And I think what we can call experiment in Kharkiv and what is a ready solution. I think that in our very dynamic environment, any project is experimental. For example, machine building technologies or management or cooperation with the partners or cooperation with the community. All these are experiments because it's impossible to plan everything in advance. We don't have enough time to check everything and to assess it in detailed way, because that's why every project is a kind of experiment. And to understand more what is our experiment, so first pilot project was experiment for us. How to treat those houses in efficient ways. It was a kind of quick help for the internally displaced people, trying to help them to find their new places for living. And we started our project in experimental regime because we were sure that the renovation of this abandoned residential students' houses was a very great idea. So, and we discovered that we didn't leave this method because it's quite efficient for us, a multitasking way. So we were committed to this experiment. Right now we have an experiment as for management models for these objects. We understand that at this stage there are very interesting things for management, how to renovate, how to repair, how people live there, if they create any community or they are just neighbors. And right now we start an experiment with managing companies, how to conclude agreements, how they will work. But we understand that due to the lack of the transparent mechanism that providing us with these tools, for example, setting service fee, we don't have these solutions not yet, but I hope we will have these solutions. So we continue our experiments and we share our experience and provide some recommendations to working groups. So we have a very comprehensive, sophisticated experiment because we are not isolated. It's not a lab testing because it's a living mechanism. So we are always asked about some recommendations. We ask about some guidelines. I don't think if it's just a simple experiment. It's like a dual purpose experiment because we conduct this experiment in the living environment, just in the middle of the city. So we can't call it just a pure experiment. So thank you very much.
Duncan, can you please share your thoughts on this topic, on the topic of the role of experimentation in your work?
Yeah, I mean, I quickly learned 30 years ago when I first started in this world of sustainability and closed loop systems that we needed to combine research with practice. And that's why I've done that. So we've got to embrace sort of the academic world as well as the world of practicing. However, I think the good news is that there's a lot of that been done. There's a lot of research projects out there. And the way I function is to undertake research projects and then apply that research to real projects. But more recently, I think one of the most valuable things is to highlight good practice. So to look for precedent. So to look for examples of projects that have been delivered, architectural projects where they've employed closed loop and circular practice, and they've done it using conventional contracts, getting warranties for second-hand materials, and you know, where they've come in on budget or they've saved money because they've had to buy less resources because they're working with stuff that they already own. So it's really important to have examples of good practice, and some of them at scale, you know, quite large developments. And the latest version of my reuse atlas has large-scale developments in the City of London, one of the most commercial places or commercially minded places in the world, where they've decided to adapt an existing building and, for example, deconstruct 9 stories of glass curtain wall system, clean it up and reassemble it on site instead of throwing it away. You know, these are people with a lot of money that could just throw stuff away like we normally do. So I think the good news is there's a lot of good examples of reuse and circular practice out there now. We just need to shout louder about it. And that's why I get involved in a lot of these talks, because more people need to know that these things exist. But it's always backed up by good and proper and rigorous research.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And regarding to that, I have a question to Bart. And I would like to ask you to tell more about this project of extension of Paris Metro, because for me it's interesting how to introduce such such practices in so big projects, in infrastructural projects, municipal projects. So could you please tell us more about this process and maybe about this negotiation and persuading to use it and actually the reason why they changed their mind about your proposal?
It's about perseverance, I would say, patience. Because in 2017, we got kicked out of the office after our presentation. And I think we took at least 20 or 30 meetings with them till they came to the conclusion to try out on one metro line, because their company that assisted them on circularity or something similar to similarity gave up in 2019. So since we came in a public tender as second company, they took then the second one, which was us. So then we were entitled to do it, but it took us, I think, at least 4 years of meetings by which we are not paid, by which we were convinced that we should keep pushing. So I would say never give up is maybe the hardest lesson here. And I think it's the same story in Ukraine. We are in talks with the Metro of Kiev, who also is talking about an extension. We want to repeat the same thing in Ukraine. Like Duncan said, take good practice perhaps from France. Of course, the Ukrainian context again is different, but we believe that we could do a repeat also on the extension of the Metro of Kiev. But you could imagine that for various reasons, people don't believe that in Kiev it is possible what we have done in Paris. So there are new objections to it. But I think there also we need time, we need perseverance, and sooner or later, I think we will arrive there too, hopefully. And if it is not the case, at least we tried over the many years. But generally, we are a little bit stubborn as a company. So let's hope that sooner or later, to being stubborn in Ukraine also pays off.
Thank you very much for your presentations. We are a little bit tired, but I think we have some energy. I thought about two things. I think that they are not new, but maybe you have some new ideas. These are questions to Anastasiia and Lidia. How to provide this discussion about secularity more sureness, because I think that people perceive this like something which is beyond their own life, or that something is beyond some real economic process, that it's something extraordinary things. And maybe it's better to produce something usual, but now you're talking about the things that are not relevant for us. And what you're talking about is beyond our reality. So how to make this topic in the focus of the public, because we are trying to draw attention to this topic, but it remains something just for specialists. So this is a discussion of some specific people, some fans, and so on and so far. I can start giving an answer. So the communities are different. There are mayors of some communities, and they are so conscious. For example, in Mykhailo, he says, "We will do it." So there is another side of the point. So right now, everyone understands that the support of the European Union will be for inclusive, ecologically, and etc. project. And if you offer something like give our funds forward, we don't know, but give us, and that's what we heard all this time. And we explained that nobody will provide you with money just for nothing. Where is your roadmap? How will you provide waste sorting? And when people started to understand, and when we talked to people that, for example, in the Western regions, people do not understand we should recycle something. And if you go to Kherson or Sumy, they understand. So there is no place for landfills. So no locations to disposal all this rubbish. And people understand. So there is no other way but doing something with it. First of all, they need some finances to develop. You will be in the focus of attention. First, if you do your job well, you will be provided with finance. If you do it once, I don't care. Once somebody will come, next time somebody will come, but for the third time nobody will come. And people are afraid.
We don't have the level of consciousness when we will put plastic to plastic if the landfill is the same. I get it. We need a good system. When we started, I'm calling a company, can you utilize asbestos? And the answer is, do you need it just on paper or do you need it really? And the problem is not just in the community, the mentality. You just give the bottle of cognac and you can take it out and bury on the landfill. It's not just the problem of authorities. We have to change the mentality. But if it is too easy, it means that your path is not the correct one. So if it is complicated, it is okay. People often are against, and then they will change. I think that if you see Kyiv, Odessa, and Lviv balconies, you all know the stories of grandmothers with carpets. I think we can use this family experience of family economic and promote it. I like to say that in Ukraine there were some problems. People were poor and they had to use what they had. We have such skills in many families. Also, don't forget about policy. Any culture of reuse will need the support of the state policy. We need some subsidies, benefits, but we can advocate. I can share our stories. The breaking moment in communication was the story in Kalush. People went to this kindergarten or worked there, and the women were crying. It was painful that Zirochka kindergarten was closed. It was such a great place for children, and then it became something abandoned. And when they were sharing this story, and when they understood that it would be able to preserve this building for IDPs, they were happy. Reuse became a bridge of communication, and it was a linkage. Also, a story I shared about these mirror shelves. One architect who doesn't like reuse and like something new, when he saw this shelf with a mirror in our hostel, he said, "It is beautiful, Spiegelschrank. I saw them in my childhood." All this personal relationship, they can lead to promotion and advocacy. Someone will be happy to see Spiegelschrank, others Zirочка kindergarten. I think it is working at any scale, from Spiegelschrank to the street.
Thank you to all the speakers for their interesting presentations. I know we only have a short amount of time left. I want to ask a question about the impact of time in terms of looking at reuse and restoration as a tool for recovery. And maybe that's a question to Anastasiia and to Lidia, just to talk about actually in the projects and examples we've been hearing in other sessions. There's incredible projects that are taking place and incredible work that's happening, but the development of materials or development of processes and change of systems is taking a long time, whereas maybe adaptive reuse is a more immediately accessible tool for recovery that we can look at. And maybe Duncan and Bart, if I could ask, and I don't ask this to aid you, but looking at your experience in the industry, maybe you can reflect on if you've seen a change in the way that adaptive reuse and retrofit has accelerated more quickly, maybe than things such as the introduction of bio-based materials or the kind of reuse of waste and debris. I wonder if there's something you can reflect on here.
Duncan, but I would like you to.
I will start then. It gives Lidia and Anna time to think on the question. I would say each stream has its own timeline, and everything depends on a lot of circumstances. As Neo Eco, for example, we are working already very long time on alternative cements, so alternative binders, but this is highly a normative product. So we are highly depending on the new norms that are happening, that still have to happen. So the time frame sometimes is disappointing, because we are developing products that are technically ready for more than 10 years, but the legislation or the normalization does not allow it to bring it under the market under the best circumstances. So time of materials is something very volatile. It's the same with bio-based materials. Bio-based materials has its own cycles. Personally, we are a little bit less involved as Neo Eco in bio-based materials. In Ukraine, we are a little bit more. So I would say to retrofit is the same. For some projects, it's good. For some projects, it's not. And I think it depends often also on the local context. I agree with you that if you need to urgently do a hospital, most probably you will think differently than if you have the time to insulate an existing panel building in Ukraine. So I think we should not be idealistic or idealistic in the approach of we want per se reuse, per se recycle, per se retrofit or whatsoever. I think each building, each circumstance is different, and we need to be very adaptive. And I think that's a pragmatic approach, but I don't think we should be dogmatic, because as way in Neo Eco, we have often projects that we have to abandon because economically it's not viable at a certain time in a certain place. But that does not mean that it should be forgotten or whatever, because it might be over time that it becomes economically viable, or it might be in another context that it's more relevant than in the context we tried out. So I think there's not an answer that suits all. We do about 300 to 400 projects per year in France. Let's say high intensives the last 10 years. So it gives us a little bit, let's say around 2,500, 3,000 projects so far, by which each project has its unique challenges, its unique truth, and also its unique lessons learned. So it's not something like, okay, we've done now this project, let's copy one-to-one now to the other location and it will work. Unfortunately, not true, and that would be my general answer. I don't know if it satisfies your question, but that would be my answer to your question is be adaptive, be flexible. And like Duncan said, there is a huge amount of examples. You have the book of Duncan, but there are really thousands and thousands of examples. New European Bauhaus, a lot of architects, Lendegaard is a good example there too. But I would say there are thousands of examples. And if you look to a particular building, get inspired by those examples. But then don't forget that your context is different economically, social, and also the availability of materials.
Sometimes Soviet Union showed us that sometimes it's not good to construct so many fast. We should think over first. The war showed, do you remember times when people quickly moved to Poland and there were wagons? People lived 6 months and they moved. And what to do with all these wagons? It's bad for environment. Well, the solution is to create social housing. Anna's project is top. If we recreate the existing ones, transform it, it is a part of circular economy. We give life to new housing and new materials. Sometimes we need time, but we can understand when people don't want to work. In Myrne, in Luch, people are afraid. Destroyed house is the only chance to prove that I had a house. Because if it is dismantled, there will be no evidence. Sometimes it is very negative. I understand people, I understand our authorities, but engineers and architects who are drivers of changes, it is better to think about life cycle of materials. I think it's better to think over. I believe that the discussion on the values, adaptive reuse and circular architecture will win if we speak pragmatic knowledge of the accessible land or the cost of the reuse. We have to share the figures. As I shared our experiment with the door, the cost of adapting this old door costed the same as the purchase of a cheap new one. And these figures are drivers for the solution of people who don't like reuse so much. Reuse of old buildings take time, but give access to central pieces of land in the city. And for IDP integration, it is a key instrument. We can't make them live far away and think that they will integrate. So it is a pragmatic factor. For integration of IDPs, we need central pieces of land, and it is better to reuse the old ones. I also like to say that reuse is not ideal. There are minuses. Not all solutions are ideal. And net zero sometimes is impossible. We would better do it step by step. Thank you for your answers. We will wrap up. It is already dark. We are wrapping up day one. Thank you very much for everybody who was with us today, our guests, our speakers. Thank you. Thank you, Jimmy. Thank you, Mykhailo and Jimmy, for organizing today's track. The recording will be accessible at the YouTube channel of Kharkiv School of Architecture. Please join. See you tomorrow at 10. Track number 4, investment for net zero.